Hello. I haven't been posting that much the past week because I'm being a little bit naughty. And instead of finishing up the Hyperbole or finishing up the first episode or anything like that, I've been jumping ahead trying to plan out the next couple episodes, which means a lot of writing, a lot of trying to restructure, kind of a lot of looking at the assets I have at my disposal and how to kind of try to set things up so that I can get things done without having to disappear into post work forever and ever and ever. And that's been fun, but during that process, I really wanted there to be a scene that establishes that there's this kind of this expanding black hole type situation that's taken over the world, or worlds type thing. And I was like, how could I shoot this scene? Because it's a scene that I've wanted to shoot for years. In fact, I've done some location scouting out in Eastern Washington, and I found this kind of surreal area that would be fun to shoot in. And we are so hot, and we have no water. It's like 100 degrees. I was just thinking, all right, at some point I'll go out there and I'll build some like observation tents, and there'll be some scientists who are like waiting for this anomaly to show up. And then I remembered I actually filmed a version of this scene with Josh Truax 2.5 years ago, and it ended up we just spent an afternoon and we filmed some stuff in front of a green screen. We filmed some stuff in a tent, and I decided to see if I could just take a week and turn that into a finished scene. And I think it's been almost a week, and I haven't totally finished, but I've gotten pretty close. And so I wanted to walk you through some of the stuff I'm doing to try to make that happen. Sit up. Nice. Nah. All right, so you can see the only practical shots we really had was some stuff we filmed in the tent here, and then a few shots that I filmed on green screen. Most of these are actually him giving a presentation after the fact, and I had a couple others. The scene was going to be really long. It was going to show him like spending months just sitting in this one spot, like looking at the sky, kind of being a little bit nuts. But I had a couple random shots of I don't even particularly remember what these were. Like, I think this was actually him looking at some, like, giant off in the distance. It was going to be a weirder scene originally. And let's see. Yeah, I just got lots of the stuff of him kind of just sitting there looking around. I'm like, all right, I can, as long as the environment's doing most of the talking, which is a place where I'm very comfortable, we can kind of turn this into a story. And so I'm really trying to push the vibe of, all of the wind is blowing. He's alone in solitude on the top of this cliff, and then all the wind dies down, and it's just eerily silent until, friggin' klaxon comes, and like, blah, blah, blah. And the sound will be, like, mixing that in, so you can just, every time it blares, you hear it echoing through all the canyons and stuff like that. And that's the vibe I really want. And he's kind of standing there staring, not believing it, until suddenly he's like, oh, wait, that's right. I have to fly away. It's always fun putting Josh into this cockpit. I've been doing that for like 8 years or maybe longer, which means I keep revamping it every time it appears in Dynamo. And this one, I've just dumped a bunch of Hyperbole assets into it. But The one thing I did differently this time is you'll notice the background is always moving, and that's because I just rendered out this 16 frame undulating loop where the camera's bouncing around an empty centered on his head, so that I don't have to animate him. And I used the pixel flow motion whatever in After Effects to kind of slow it down, and that also means that when he pushes a lever, I was able to just cut to it playing normal speed to kind of make the ship look like it's kind of coming to life. And that worked so much better than just compositing somebody in front of a still with a little bit of camera shake. It really brought it to life, and the render time wasn't actually, it was a quick little render, 16 frames. I'm happy with the spotlights. If you've ever tried to do like volumetric spotlights in Blender, it's surprisingly hard, because if you just apply volumetric effect to a cone, it's brightest where it's thickest, but it should be, because of the quadratic fall off, like brightest near the source. And so you could add like a linear or a gradient and stuff like that, but I ended up just putting together this 2D element, which I can both use in the composite to just screen it in there, or I can attach it to the ship. Here, let's F3 images as planes, bring in this, we'll make it emit, yes. And I'm going to, instead of using the brightness into an emission, I'm going to just create an add shader. And there we go. Now I'll just add onto the background. The one difficulty with it is that, it's really easy to get along the edge and it gets skinnier. But let's say you have a camera here. Yeah, but we'll add a locked track constraint. And I'm not sure which the right axes are, but there's some mixture here. We'll have it tracked to the camera. And that's not right. Oh, maybe it was right. Yeah, there we go. And now wherever the camera goes, it'll always just be aiming at it. It does fall apart a little bit if you get down like right along the axis here. You finally kind of see it. It can throw it off, but at least when you're orbiting around it, it works pretty good. And so that's how I was able to get it to work even when the ship's doing a 180. I'll have this image down below if you want to use it for anything. The atmosphere in this, all the smoke going by, is stock from my friend's stock footage website, detonationfilms.com, and I'll link to it below. It's like $20 per clip, but I end up using them over and over and over, especially these like nice atmospheric clips, just because getting some actual practical atmosphere in there can help an otherwise kind of sterile CG shot feel really good. Still a lot of things I'd like to rework. One thing, because I'm trying to invent the scene in the edit, it's important that I have shots to play around in the edit with, even if they're not completely done. So a lot of times I'm kind of trying to assemble a thing, and I'll just hit render before I go to bed, so I can wake up the next morning and start playing around with the shot. So this shot doesn't have nearly enough samples. This is actually the second time I made this shot, because the first time I had this I didn't have the ship figured out. This is a model I've been using since 2009 or something ridiculous like that, and every once in a while I'll go in and I'll kind of give it a little bit of love, but it's I rarely do that with models where I'll just go in and revamp them, but in this case it's kind of been fun to see it evolve over the years. Like having to translate it from a Blender internal model into like a Cycles ready model, and now I'm redoing all those materials with what I know now. The plants, these are just the succulents I released a while back with a couple noise modifiers that kind of make them wiggle, and it kind of looks like it. The ground is my first experiment playing with a couple of the Quixel photo scans. I'd like to do them myself. It's just I haven't gone over to Eastern Washington. Eastern Washington is like a bunch of desert. Western Washington is like a rainforest, and there's just a mountain range in the middle that stops all the rain, so we all get it. And the other side is just like big rocks and stuff, if you're not familiar with the geography. But that means I have both rainforests and deserts if I need to film anywhere. It's a pretty cool region if you're looking for diversity, and we're a couple hours from the ocean. And I know some of you actually live in Eastern Washington, statistically, probably, and so I know it isn't all just big rocks, but it is arid, and if I'm filming over there, it is for the big rocks. It's kind of a poor man's Monument Valley type scenario, which is pretty cool. The rest of the ground it's a mix of photo scans I've done myself, a couple of Quixel scans, and also me trying to just kind of lift some geometry from Google Maps, which I don't think is legal. I also don't think you'd get in trouble for it. I don't think it is in any way hurting anyone to do it. And it's really, really, really fun because you can just be like, hey, I need to make an alien planet. Let's just lift some bits, mix and match, kind of use them as like 3D global environmental clip art. It's absolutely phenomenal. They're incredibly high res these days if you go to the right spots. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm using that to lay out the scene, and then I'm going in and I'm just replacing to get the structure. Then I'm replacing all of it with like my own assets. But I wanna look into more if there's any way to actually legally use those assets, because it's just ridiculously powerful. And it's such a fun way to be able to build a scene, actually having an actual environment and just going in and finding the shots and all of that, instead of like having to sculpt everything from scratch and create it all from. It's nice to be able to have existing restrictions to work in. Which honestly is why I like this entire scene, because the footage is already set. Josh only had that beard for a little while, and we actually filmed him shaving it later on that day. But it's more like, all right, what's the best thing you can make out of these limited assets? Instead of like, hey, anything you can think of, make the best version of that. And it's like, wow, that's very fuzzy. Can you be more specific? And so I like that. But okay, so I wanted to make a new shot for this scene. The wind blowing is a really big part of the entire scene, and so I wanted there to be a little weather station with one of those little spinning cut to word anemometer. Thank you. And we see it spinning really fast in like the first shot, and then later when the wind dies down, we see it kind of slowing to a stop. And I think a lot of times having a full digital shot, if you're like, oh, and we'll just add a full digital shot, that sounds like kind of a big undertaking, but it really doesn't have to be. And so I wanted to just go through that. Let's see kind of how it goes. This might not work. Okay, so starting with reference, just going through Google Images here and trying to get a sense of what these types of things tend to look like. And a lot of them kind of look the same. There's the little spinny cups, which I think are the anemometers themselves, and a little weather vane type situation. And this cone thing, which my guess is some sort of humidity sensor, but they all have them, so maybe we'll add one of those. And I like this one. It's all nice, clean, injection molded plastic. We can do that really good. I'm just kind of like trying to figure out the visual language. Like everything's mounted to the central pole. There's a little translucence to the plastic, which I really like. Everything's got a cable. It all kind of goes down. Maybe this is. Do all the cables go down? Yeah. These type of shapes are really fun to make. I think we'll have some fun making those. I like this one, just kind of the different plastic pieces all fitting together, nice and I don't know, looks like a toy. And how modular they can kind of be. Like a lot of them are just kind of the different components all stuck together on a mast, which looks very, it's not really particularly for consumers. It's kind of more of a scientist-y type feeling where they have these different pieces that they stick together and they feed into a computer. So with all of that in mind, let's kind of jump in. I'm going to start by making kind of a T, I think, a small T, which will have the weather vane on one side and the anemometer on the other. So with the cube here, I'll turn on screencast keys. Boop boop. I'll turn on mirror and clipping, so I can stick these together. And I should probably make it to scale, which just means shrink it. So right now, everything that's on the underside here is going to be inset. So right now I'm coming up with the framework for what the injection molded bits will look like on the bottom. In fact, let's see. Probably refine that in a second. Maybe I can. Yeah, I'll select all of these. And because you'll see what I'm doing in a sec. I'm gonna hit X, limited dissolve, and that gets rid of all those extra edges. And that means now, before I do that, let's add some screw holes. So you can bevel just one point, like beveling, Control B lets you smooth that out. But you can also bevel just one point with Control Shift B, which is kind of cool here. Here, I can scroll to turn down the number of points. But if you hit P, you can change the profile, so you can actually just add a hole right in the middle here. So I might select these and hit Control Shift B. You can make some holes. That one on the end is a little funky. Maybe I'll just get rid of that one. Control-Shift-B, yeah. If I go into face selection mode here, I can hit X, limited dissolve, and they'll just, you know, give me these, you know, solid circles. I'm going to select all of these and hit I to inset once, extrude it up. Then I'm going to hit I twice to extrude each individual piece here. And so now I can just bring all of those up towards close to the top. And look at that. That kind of looks like injection molded plastic. I dig it. I'm going to select all of these and just kind of just shrink them down just a little bit here. Maybe bevel around the top. Oh, the profile is still funky. And yeah, that feels like a nice piece. Gonna turn on auto smooth here. And I guess this was going to be having a pole mounted to it, which now I don't really totally know how that would work. Maybe I'll just not integrate it particularly well and have it stick out the bottom. Yeah. So I'll do that. This will be mounted on some sort of like steel pole. Maybe I'll have a little bit coming out the top too. I don't even think we'll see it. I want to be looking up at it, kind of like this. So I'm adding most of my detail to the bottom. I already have the shot in mind, and it's going to be like, you know, here's the weather thing, here's the weather vane. Maybe there'll be a ship kind of in the background, but we're looking up at the sky. And so I'm not going to add as many details to the top of it, because we'll probably never see them. I mean, I could release this as an asset, and that would justify spending more time on it. But I don't honestly think you guys would have much use for an anemometer. So, am I going to use the word anemometer a lot so that hopefully it stays in my brain? Yep, that's what I'm doing. This will be kind of like a tightening nut or something that will kind of help secure it to the top of the pole. Yeah. I'm going to, if I join these now, then this will have that same mirror modifier applied to it. So, that this one has. So I'm going to apply that with Control A. Join. Yeah, now that's working. And this is where I might start actually setting up my camera angle. I want it to be, since it's down on the ground looking up, I think I want it to actually be a fairly wide lens, because there isn't usually a lot of room between. Well, I guess I don't know why I'm picturing the anemometer directly like a foot from the ground. It would make sense that it's a bit up in the air, so maybe yeah, I won't worry about it. Yeah, that's probably good. Here, let me add in a quick pole. I'm really looking forward to modeling some zip ties. I feel like something kind of just as normal and everyday as zip ties is really going to add some realism. And it's also like, who would model when they're modeling a sci-fi thing? Not that this is particularly sci-fi. Why would you model a zip tie? Let's see here. Do I have any nice metal pieces? I thought I gathered some of these specifically for this at one point. Let's try this. Yeah, these are fine. I'll use dirty metal. Cylinder projection. Let's see how this unwraps. UV edit. Where are you, UV? There you are. Yeah, looks fine. I've got a better material somewhere, but maybe I'll stumble upon it later. So I think I want to actually duplicate this for right here, and this will be where like the weather vane is mounted, and this one will be where the anemometer is mounted, or vice versa. Let's see, I want to have a little bit as if this tightens up against a screw, so I'm going to do that. Right click, subdivide, and that means I can hit Control Alt Shift S. Nope, Control Alt S. Yeah, and that lets you spherize any selected points. So that makes me just kind of up-res that a little bit. Okay. Now the spinny bit. Let's do the anemometer. Just extruding and scaling and all of that fun stuff. Cool. And this might be too high density, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Yeah, just turn on proportional editing. It's gonna let me just kind of snag that down a little bit. Cool. I'm not, because this is going to be a fairly simple scene, I'm not worried about preserving polygons all that much, because no matter how high poly we get here, it's always going to, it's not going to bog down the scene. Oh, proportional editing still on. What's 360 divided by 3? That's something I will need to know in a minute here. I should just know it. I've looked it up so many stupid times. Okay. Rotate 90 degrees, scale up. Extrude, scale. That face, select everything, and Alt-E, extrude along normals, and I'll just poof it up a little bit. Yeah, I should have been using more faces on this. Oh well. Okay, calculator. 360. Wow, this is a high def calculator. Divided by 3 equals 120. I did know that. I knew that. Means if I select all these, woo, go to the top view, change the rotation point to the 3D cursor here. Rotate 120. Rotate 120. Now we've got all those pieces, and let's add some Boolean detail real quick. Can add another cylinder here. Let's just add some little screw holes. Back to meeting point. Just going all the way through. And because I bool tool enable, I can select those and select the thing I want to eat away from and hit Control negative on the numpad, and it'll give me these little recessions here, which I just always think work really well for making something look kind of, you know, injection molded and manufactured. Apply that. And I doubt we're ever going to see in there, but I'm going to add some screws because we're going to want to see some screws at some point. Let's see, let's go from there to there. J. There to there. J to join. So I can just select these and hit extrude and maybe bevel them just a little bit. There we go. We have our nice high-res screw. A lot of times I'll join, you know, instead of having each screw be its own object. Blender gets bogged down sometimes. Like, if you have a bunch of different objects, and it's a lot better to make all of them just be part of one object. And I don't know exactly why that is, but... Okay, let's mirror this to come popping out the other side, too. Doesn't totally make sense. One side should be a screw, and the other should probably be a bolt that it goes into, but eh. Let's give this kind of a metal. And that'll just be, let's see, we'll just turn down the roughness and darken it a little bit, and it should hopefully work. Yeah, let's start making this plastic work a little bit better, too. I should have modeled these cups higher res. Well, one thing we can do, since there aren't that many, well, I've got 3 cups. I'll just fix up 1 cup. I'm going to select all of these rings here. Right-click, subdivide, and that's going to let me do that trick I was just talking about. Here, I'll do the one in here too. Right-click, subdivide, where I select that ring, and then hit Control-Alt-S, and that will spherize it. Oh. That does it. This inner ring does not select the loop. So I'll just hit plus, and then I'll deselect this loop and that loop, and that gives it to me selected, if that makes sense. There we go. Now that's a little smoother. I can double that a little bit too. Delete those. Cursor. 20. 20. Do. Okay, and I guess we'll make this metal too. Assign. Excellent. Oh. Parent the screws. Oh. Oh, that should work. Yeah. I to add a rotation keyframe. Rotate it, add another keyframe later. Woo! And Shift E lets us do a linear extrapolation. Oh yeah, spinning nice and quick. I dig it. And I think I want actually everything to be wiggling just a little bit to really make it feel as if, you know, everything's dynamic. So I'm going to parent this to this. I'm just going to parent everything along its chain so that I can add wiggle modifiers later if I want to at any point, and it'll just propagate through everything later. That would be a weird origin point, but we won't keep that. So I do know that I have some fairly high contrast lighting from those big kind of stadium lights that are set up, and so I'm going to add a big point light here. Just kind of help me dial in the lighting right now. So is that pretty bright? Yeah. 0.2. Ooh, and this is already looking good. Here I'm going to turn on the denoising. Turn on GPU. Yeah, that's looking pretty good actually. I'm happy with that. Let's try turning on the subsurface scattering. It might be dumb, or maybe I should just mix in some translucency. This will be white plastic. Shader. Just a tiny little bit of translucency, because I have the node wrangler on. I can just hit Control Shift, right click and drag, and it'll mix those two. And cool. If I make translucent like a little beige, that looks like plastic. I'll make this be the same material. I might have to apply scales and stuff. Don't think that would make a difference, but okay. I guess now a weather vane. Gonna duplicate as much of this as I can here. And right now I'm basically just modeling exactly what I saw. Like, I'm not doing anything interesting to it, which a lot of times I would kind of want to be. You know, like some sort of vaguely sci-fi advancement or something to show it isn't exactly just the weather vanes that we're used to. But you know what? The fact that every single one of those basically look the same on on Google image search. I'm so used to saying Google Earth. Leads me to believe that they kind of found something that worked and they're just sticking with it. How come this is selecting? Those shouldn't be connected. How are they connected? Okay, well, I'll just delete these. And maybe scale that down just a little bit. Come up with a nice weather vane type shape. You can also, if you bevel just a specific point like this, you can eat away at a corner like this, which is nice on a. Otherwise that's kind of hard to do on a 2D model, such as this. Okay, extrude that out. And these two would intersect, so I guess, yeah, I do have to leave it up as high as it is. It does feel a little wonky, though. Okay, let's animate this. A little noise modifier. Ideally, I can just use the Z-axis here. Let me select it. Is it somewhere else? Am I just having trouble selecting it? I'll just turn them off. Where is it? What? Can I just not see it? Have I lost my mind? Insert rotation keyframe. Oh, it's just way, way up here. It's 6,000 degrees. That is a place where it should be. Probably there's a good reason for it, but I don't know what it is. Noise modifier, yeah. Oh, turn up the scale a little bit. That's working good. Parent that. Just the tiniest little wiggle to this one. There we go. Now the Z-axis is where it's supposed to be. 0, 2. Wow, that's very subtle. 0.2. Too subtle. 0, 6. Yeah, that makes it feel kind of like stuff's happening. Let's add those cables. Honestly, probably some part of this should be stationary. I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. Curve. Bring on those Bezier curves. And it's going to help if I actually give them a little bit of width right from the get-go. So geometry. Turn up the depth. Okay, E to extrude. I always love laying cables like this. I guess it can be kind of annoying, but mostly I just love it. So this will be where the first zip tie is. Just I'll give it a little slack, and there'll be another zip tie down here. Cool. Gonna duplicate this and just kind of do the exact same thing, but over here. Hey. Guess that maybe that cable's a bit thick. Only a little. Cool. Alright. Zip tie. What's the best way to do a zip tie? Let's just do... I don't even know if we'll be able to see the details here. There's that kind of serrated bit on a zip tie, and I think we can just extrude all of these, you know, edges out and create that. Okay. So I'm gonna turn on proportional editing here and pull these out around here. Hopefully that kind of works. Did I tweak the... Turn off proportional editing. I scaled on the wrong axis. Okay. Inset, extrude, scale them together. Cool. Inset this. Extrude individual faces. And I'm going to just scale all those individual origins like that. And that kind of gives us that zip tie look. Honestly, I don't know. We'll see how this works. Cursor. Create a little cube here. Let's see if we can create something that kind of looks like that latching mechanism. Whoop. That kind of looks like a zip tie. Yeah, it looks huge, doesn't it? Yeah, it's probably fine. I think the biggest thing, I should have paid a little bit more attention to like what scale I'm actually working at and all of that, but my thought was it would be so small you wouldn't even really see it. But let's see, if we give it a dark color. Most zip ties are kind of dark and fairly shiny. Alright, whatever. It reads as a band, which is all I want. Okay, and now this is where we could start to figure out, do we want it to be anything more than this? We could add more specific materials to this, like a little bit of grime, but I actually don't think that we need it particularly. This is like bare bones minimum, which is probably actually fine. Here, I'm gonna save this. Anemometer. And I'm going to link in the ship. Ship packs up with no motion. Collection. Parked chopper. And I'm just going to see what this looks like if I set this up in the background here. Yeah, this is all looking about right. Okay, so this is what it's looking like. I like that we get this this orange bit coming from inside the ship here is what kind of makes the scene for me. So I like having that in there, but everything else is getting, you know, obviously totally gummed up. So, and I think that's just because this light's here. It should be coming from like that mounted light up above anyways. So if I just get it up here really, really bright. Ideally, I can keep the ship in darkness, but have it hitting the meter. Maybe I can just use a spotlight. Probably kind of weird. 11,000. Let's see if we can we track? No, I don't think Control-T tracks anymore. That used to give you a track constraint. Here, let's turn on a sun. Let's create a sun lamp. Whoa, it's so bright. Ha Honestly, I thought this part would just kind of like fall together, but... Alright, so we've got the light bouncing off this lower wing, lighting up this upper wing here. I could just, like, keep the ship there in the background, but without having it immediately behind this thing. Also, if I use some depth of field here, and just target that, and lower the f-stop, it will separate it from the background a little. And that'll make it render nice. Yeah, that could work pretty good. I do want this entire thing to be wiggling just a little bit, so I'm going to add an empty just to the base here. This parent, okay, parent all this to that, and parent the pole to the empty. Let's make sure, yeah, they're on the right axis. And then insert a keyframe here. Add a little noise modifier to that. 102. That's maybe intense, isn't it? It should probably even be a little bit faster. And more subtle. I feel like the wiggle of this should not be faster than the spinning of this, because that's what's causing the wiggle. Oh, now it's spinning very quick. Sometimes it's hard like this to tell how fast something's spinning, because it's like maybe it's overlapping and like almost syncing up with itself. But I feel like this is probably pretty good, and I'll just make this rotation very subtle. 0.006. Cool. And honestly, since I don't have the camera moving, I don't even need the background rendered with this, so I can just, I'll render it out as a separate pass. So, yeah. Alright, I'll just render that out. I'm gonna make color management low contrast, because I'm gonna be using a little film convert pass on the end to make it line up with match the rest of the footage. Maybe I'll make this slightly beige. Just a little. Yeah, that works. That works good. So I'll just set up my passes here. I don't think I need a depth pass or a mist pass or anything like that, so I'm just gonna save this in Sterling Renders Anemometer frames. Why did I call it frames? And I don't think, here, turn on motion blur. I don't think I need that many samples, but I do have a lot of motion blur going, and it won't actually be, there isn't much for it to render, so I think even if I do a bunch of samples, that's fine. Yeah, I think 100 frames will be more than sufficient, and then just hit Control F12. We'll see what happens. Oh, yes. I need to film transparent and make sure that I'm exporting to a PNG with an alpha channel. Good. I'm going to keep it 8-bit because, I don't know, I'm keeping my life low-bit color-wise these days. And we'll see what this looks like once the denoising turns on. Oh, it's not denoising. I have it on for viewport, but not for render. I'm just doing this bit because maybe, I assume we all know how to render stuff, but I never see how other people set up their render setups. Maybe there's different ways of doing it. That's nice. Alright, I'm just gonna let it render. See you in a sec. Okay, and after watching it render 15 frames, you know how I said this is the absolute bare minimum? I kind of don't like doing the absolute bare minimum these days, so let's add a little logo or something here, like a little brand name, just to kind of make it all feel a little bit more real. And so I think the easiest way of doing that is just render out something here in Blender. So I'm gonna set up a camera, make it look forwards, set it to orthographic, go to the camera view with Control numpad 0. Oh, this looks like it's, there we go. Let's add some text. Dynavane. Rotate 90 degrees. No, let's figure out what's something a little better than that. Good thing is list of wind deities, because Greek gods never go out of style. Let's see. Aeolus, keeper of winds. Later writers made him a full-fledged god. Anemoi, Boreas, god of the north wind, and winter, Eus, Notus, Zephyrus. I also feel like I don't think people particularly believe in Greek gods anymore, so it's like a nice public domain deity system that will never sound, you know, it lets you be kind of like generic enough and specific enough that it sounds like, you know, some company was like, oh, I'm just really into Aeolus. I don't like Aeolus because it reminds me of aioli, which is a sauce or something. Aeolus. Alright, let's just do it. Aeol vein. That's dumb. I'm fired. I should be fired. Let's try this. Ooh, but I do like that. Ink. Incorporated. Tech. Tech. International. Sure, okay. So I will just turn on film, transparent, render. Great. Alt S, and under Sterling, I'm just going to call this Aeolus, and actually, let's make it a little more interesting. Is that a plane? This is not good graphic design. In fact, this is bad. This is quite bad, but it'll look like something, and that's all. That's really all I want. Okay, now we go back up to our weather vane here. And these are all using the white plastic, and so let's see, we'll add a mix shader. Bring in a little bit of diffuse. Let's see, let's use kind of a red. Yeah. And the thing that's going to control the mix between the white plastic and the red here will be an image texture. Which image texture? Oh, you know it's our aioli vane. So now all we got to do is unwrap these objects here. So view, project from view. Just get it small down here. How's that look? Does it do anything yet? It isn't. Let's use alpha instead of color. Yes. Yes. Hey, that is working. That's great. Instead of repeat, we're just gonna have it clip. So now we just have our single vane here, and it's projecting all the way through. So we'll grab these faces. Do we want to keep? And then we'll hit Control I. Here's everything else. I'm just going to scale it and make sure it's not overlapping the logo. That's working great. Hey, this one just kind of worked, didn't it? I'll select the rest, do the exact same thing we just did. Just hide it from the logo. Oh, that one we want. And I don't think any of these need to say aioli vane. So, boop. That's probably fine. All right, Control F12. We'll see if this works a little better. Yeah, that's gonna help sell it, I think. It's a little blurry. Well, okay, so that's rendered. Let's see if we can render with a quick image of the ship. There we go. And there we go. And I'm going to render it. I'm going to duplicate this camera here, and I'm going to get it a little wide just to give us a little bit of wiggle room. Turn off the border render with Control-Alt-B, and let's see how this looks. I don't have a ground plane right now, which might be a little weird. I think the light bouncing off of this wing is really making this look a little bit too intense, so I might just kill that a little bit with the plane and make it like dark. Darker? Huh. I guess it's just... Turn out the specular... This is so dark. How is it... I guess this light is just very, very, very bright. Okay, yeah, that's looking a bit better. And so let's just render it. Actually, I'm going to turn off depth of field because I can add that easily enough in post, and because it's going to be out of focus, I don't need that many crazy samples, so now we'll do it. Okay! Alt-S to save this. This will just be under the ship. Great. Okay, and now After Effects, and I don't talk about After Effects all that much because it costs money every month to subscribe to the Adobe suite, and I prefer to talk about free options, but it is part of the workflow I normally use. So let's just keep going here. I'll bring in under the ship. and I'm going to drag it down and make a new composition out of it. Cool. And let's bring in our anemometer. Oh, it's because I was thinking of anemometer as I was talking, and that's why I said it weird. Okay. Drag that over the top, and compositionally, yeah, that works okay. So this is going to be going immediately after this. Nope, not this one. Establish all over, because it was the second time I did it. It looks like it says establish a lover, though, which would be a far more interesting film. And to make sure everything matches as well as it can, I'm going to just start copying. Let's see, this is I'm going to copy some of these adjustment layers and such. Plop them over the top, and Control-Alt-F makes them fit the whole thing. I'm doing a lot with diffusion. In fact, I have one blur layer. It's just a Gaussian blur on an adjustment layer, but it's powered by one of those smoke elements I was talking about, which means that the blur just kind of passes through, and because fog actually does blur everything, it's a fairly realistic effect, and I don't know, you can kind of see it. It works a lot more, it's a lot more natural, interesting of a look than just screening some mist over the top. Okay, in the background here, huge stars. Yeah, yeah. And make sure black fits, Control-Alt-F. And now, let's start dragging in some of those mist elements. I've got, let's see. Oh, I also have this blue haze I'm usually mixing with the mist pass, which I'm not bothering with the mist pass today, but I will. Let's see, let's just drop this in the behind the ship, and one in front of the ship, but behind the anemometer. Ooh, that's maybe a bit intense. Like these old masks. And this is just a thing I do where I'll copy in elements from other compositions, because it's one of the easiest ways I found to keep everything looking consistent. But it's still, you still have to dial in quite a bit. Okay, gonna add a new adjustment layer here above the ship. Camera lens blur. I like that diffraction fringe. Ooh. Okay. And let's add in, and this one I have a little bit of like a golden mist right by the door that really adds a lot of that feeling of, I don't know, volumetric light. There it is. So I will just grab that, and right now it's using a Lumamat based off of the mist pass. I'm gonna ignore that. So I can just stick that right there. Turn it up all the way. You can see the mask is kind of obvious, but ooh, and the fact that it's stuttering, that's because I actually have it slowed to 50% and using pixel interpolation. So if I turn that on, every in-between frame is going to be made up, which is nice. Smoke's usually pretty forgiving, but every once in a while you get a weird glitch that's kind of distracting. But in this case, it should. There, now it's smooth, which is cool. It does increase preview render times, obviously. So let's see. Turn that down a little bit. Even more. And I'm going to zoom in under the ship here. Cool. Let's kind of see how that's looking. Cool. Okay, so the weather vane is pointing this way, but the mist is going that way, which makes sense because we've kind of flipped 180 degrees from the previous shot. So I'm going to flip these mist passes, just negative. It's maybe a better way to do this, but this is how I do it. After Effects, more than anything, is just me using techniques I decided on, 12, 15 years ago, and never really thinking about them again. I rarely have anything interesting that I do with After Effects. Okay, and we have a light post up here, so let's put some of those guys back in. Drop it down under the ship, turn the transparency way down. There we go, there's the right one. Okay, and if I wanted, let's see, we should drop in one more kind of just random smoke pass. Yeah, just a nice white one. Turn off the lure mat. And mostly, I want it up in this top right corner because that's where most of the light source is, and so I want the smoke to be mostly visible around there. Feather it like crazy. Turn it way down. Maybe I'll put one behind the ship also and offset it. This back spotlight isn't particularly good, actually. And it's fine. There's a lot of stuff I tweak, but a lot of it's probably, I don't know. It's stuff where you just kind of look at it in silence for a long time and try to figure out why stuff isn't totally clicking. Like, maybe the front needs to pop a little bit more, or maybe it needs to be a little bit brighter. In fact, here, I might duplicate this. Crunch the blacks a little so I'm only have those highlights. And then add that on top of the other one, just to make the highlights really bright. If I wanted, I could even add a tiny little bit of glow there. We'll see how this looks. Okay, and I'm only rendering out 40 frames with a RAM preview. The mist in the background is maybe a bit much, but I think also it kind of helps. RAM previews take so long in After Effects. I also have a bunch of the frame interpolation and stuff. The pixel motion all is pretty hefty too, but I think this will work all right. So I'm going to render this out. So there we go. There's the final scene, and again, maybe not the fastest way to make a film. If you had a team of people, that could be very cool. But I like being able to make these little full digital cutaways, especially for storytelling purposes. Like if somebody references something and you want to make it a little bit more clear, you could cut to like a monitor or something that's showing some relevant information, just so people get that kind of like subconscious visual, or just little details. Or if you need to hide and edit and you don't have any B-roll, a lot of times you can manufacture some B-roll. And so there's just a lot of times where it gives you that extra flexibility, and it doesn't have to be a particularly big deal. I like being able to use the shallow depth of field because that means you only really have to work on one specific object, and everything else can kind of be a little bit impressionistic in the back. But yeah, that's talking about some stuff. I'll talk to you later.